What's up, everybody? My name is Joshua Yoder, and welcome to the Joshua Yoder Show. And today, my guest is someone who deserves all the love and respect that he gets. A decades of experience of pro wrestling as a wrestler, a coach, an all-around great human being. His name is Mark Mest. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's great to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has, man, and I'm glad to get to hear from you again. I miss being able to talk to a lot of the guys. Believe me.
Yeah, I remember them years ago. It was a lot of fun. Got a chance to do a lot of stuff.
Oh, believe me, we'll get to plenty of that. but but the first thing I want to bring up is a couple weeks ago we lost a great man in the world of professional wrestling, especially here in the state of Pennsylvania. His name's Lee, and he sadly is no longer with us. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on him, and let's talk about him for a little bit.
Yeah, Max Tempest. Yeah, Max Lee. He was a really cool dude. And even though he had a disability, he had MS and everything. He went out and he loved wrestling so much. His passion. I mean, he was an encyclopedia. He knows about matches and this and that. And when he got a chance to be able to manage there for Tate at ACW, and he managed a bunch of guys and everything, and you know, he never thought of being, limited. You know, he had a good mouth on him, as a manager should, and you know, yeah. Overall, he was a really good dude, and it's a shame because he was only, I think, in his 40s when he passed here, and it's sad, but yeah, I mean, guy was really great. I definitely miss him.
I remember I've worked with Tate a few times, and I got to meet Lee, and him and I hit it off pretty well. He was a super nice guy, and we talked actually, since you mentioned like disabilities, like we talked about that a good bit. And me having been born with scoliosis, cerebral palsy, he was definitely someone easy to talk to, and he definitely helped ease my mind when it comes to stuff like that physically. And it's a shame that he's no longer with us. And like I said, he was a super great guy.
Yeah, and he was real. He wasn't fake. He kind of told you, how he is, how he was. He didn't sugarcoat anything. If something, if you did something, and even though he couldn't physically get in the ring, he would tell guys, hey, that looked good, that didn't look good, because his passion for wrestling has been, he watched tapes and everything and whatnot all, he got it. Even though he couldn't get in the ring, he got it, and that's what really kind of like set him aside, because there's a lot of guys in wrestling that can train for years and never get it, never understand the psychology, never understand, how to put moves together, how to put a match together, but he did, and and he was real as can be. And if he was mad or he got upset about something, he definitely let you know about it.
No, absolutely. But like I said, he rest in peace, Lee. You will be missed. You'll be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely miss him.
No, amen to that. And I pray for anyone that knew him, his family. It's such a travesty and a loss to wrestling.
Yes, it is. Especially here, because he was a big family. He was a big part of the family for Tate and ACW, and he was at every show, and definitely miss my brother. R.I.P. buddy.
Amen to that. And speaking of wrestling, that's something you seem to know pretty well about, huh?
A little bit, I think.
Yeah. So, like I said, you've had decades of experience, people. This man has done a lot in pro wrestling, and not just in wrestling, but in people's lives as well. But let's talk about that a little bit, Mark. What first drawn you to the world of professional wrestling?
I think it's like any young kid who sees something on TV and it catches their eye. I remember, growing up on a farm, we were rural. We didn't have any cable TV or anything like that. We just had everything off an antenna. So, you know, Saturday morning TV, Saturday, watching like Wrestling Challenge or Superstars, just happened to You watch your Saturday morning cartoons when you're younger, and you just flip through stuff, and then you see something like that, and it catches your eye. You're like, "Oh my God, what's this?" And then you get to the Saturday night's main event, and I actually, I live for those. I never knew they were coming because, again, back then it wasn't like a guide that you can really go to and you just hope that that maybe on a program, one of the programs, they'll tell you a Saturday night's main event's coming up. And I would tape them because there's sometimes I wouldn't be allowed to watch them all because well, they didn't come on to 11:30 and they didn't get over till like 1. So but I was drawn probably at an early age, probably I'm gonna say between 7 and 9, give or take. And I just like grew. I just something that just attracted me to it. Guys getting in the ring and doing all these different things, and it just for some reason it drew me there, and I just tried to figure out more. And back then there was no internet, so it's not like I'd hop on Google and search things. So I was, they had the PWI magazine, so I'd go into a store. I remember coming home from places and seeing like a PWA magazine, or other smaller magazines, and like I'd buy it, and ask if I could buy it, and they'd buy it, and to read it. And then even as I got older, it's just like they had those dirt sheets kind of thing. I was thinking about trying to get into them and everything just to see what was going on. But yeah, I mean, it started at an early age, and it just kind of blossomed from there.
Now, for me, when I got into wrestling, the guy that introduced me to it was a guy by the name of Sting. And I was just something about him in the face paint, just it drew me into pro wrestling. That's kind of like how I got into it. Who was the guy that you would say that when you saw on TV, you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta watch him?
A lot of people say it's redundant, but it was Hogan, and then after Hogan, and it was kind of like the big boss man, like I just saw, but Hogan early on, like I remember there's a couple of times I would tape Saturday Night's Main Event on the VCR, and I'd go back to watch it the next day, and I hit the timer wrong, or I'd run out of tape and I'd miss the ending. But just seeing like the crowd react to him, how he got over so much, and the people just loved him. It's a character that just stuck with you. He stood out because of the yellow, but he was a big guy and he was in good shape. So then it also draws you because you're looking at this guy and going, wow, this guy must be strong as hell. And then when you see him in the ring doing stuff to guys, it just attracted me more because, being on the farm, I was always, a strong guy picking things up, we were baling hay, we were loading, this and that. We were planting, and we had like fertilizer bags that weigh 50 or 80 pounds. And we got to load up the planter to fertilizer to get corn, to plant the corn or the soybeans, so I kind of like, well, he has to go to a gym. He has to be in good shape. And I kind of like, that kind of mirrored with being on the farm, just because, I'm doing all this, and I always thought I was in okay shape, and not great shape because I had a lot of issues when I was younger, but that kind of kept me from doing more things than I want to. But yeah, Hogan was the guy that really got me into it.
Did you ever think, like even watching as you got older, you're like, man, I would really love to do this?
Oh, absolutely. But the thing is, as I was saying, in my early age, I had some problems which would really kind of like test that for me. When I was 10 years old, I remember it was wintertime, and we were doing stuff on the farm, and going to school, of course, and I had problems walking with my left hip. It started to hurt, and I told my dad, and I said, I don't know why, but it hurts when I walk. I don't know what's wrong. So we made an appointment with the orthopedic, and we went to the doctor, and it was a Friday after school because I didn't want to miss school if I didn't have to. And That's when they still had the X-rays, everything in the office. And I remember going in. Doctor came in, talked to us, said, "Hey, we'll take a couple X-rays, we'll look." And I'll never forget. Doctor comes back in, puts the X-rays up on the screen there, and he goes, "I'm not sure what's wrong here," but he goes, "We got to admit him to the hospital." And I'm thinking, like, huh? Well, this is now 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. I thought I was going home. And he's like, "There's something wrong with your hip. We're not exactly sure, but we need to run more tests. I don't want you putting any more weight on that leg at all. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have a wheelchair, and the hospital was right across the street. So he's like, we're gonna wheel you out, have your dad take you over there, and we're gonna admit you for a couple of days just to see what's going on." And that's when they found out that I had something called a slipped epiphysis. And that's where my hip socket was turning out. And doctor says the only way to solve that is to put pins in it. So at 10 years old, I had major hip surgery. And I was on crutches for a little over 6 months. Then I was on a cane for a couple months. I was took about a year to heal. But I wasn't allowed to run or jump or anything like that. And, I went back to get tests done and everything. And he was looking at my right hip. And I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "It happened to your left. We're afraid it might happen to your right." And wouldn't you know it, 2 years later, when I was, at that time, elementary went for us to 6th grade. And I was in 6th grade, and once you know it, my right hip started to have the same problems. They had to put pins in to stop it, the whole 9 yards. Crutches for over 6 months, this and that, not allowed to walk. I mean, allowed to crutches, then on a cane for a few months, and then I could walk without it, but I'm still not allowed to run or jump, you know. But then, I got healed. Everything was good. And then the doctor goes, "Well, we're going to need to take the pins out." And I'm like, "Okay." And that was in 8th grade. So he goes, "Look, procedure's easy. Just going to go in there. We're just going to open you up, unscrew the screws out, close you back up. You'll walk out of the hospital. We're going to do both legs at the same time. Not a big deal. You'll be able to walk out. Everything's fine." Well, I woke up from the first surgery with one leg wrapped, not the other. And doc comes in. I go, "Doc," "what happened?" He said, "You grew too much." He says, and it didn't mean like weight wise. He goes, "Your bones grew and they overtook the screws." So he goes, we had to chip part of your hip away to get to him." I'm like,
Yikes.
"You chipped part of my hip away?" He goes, "Yeah, we had to." And I was like, "Okay." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, you can't walk." He goes, "You're gonna be on crutches for another probably 3 to 4 months at least, and then once you're able to walk again," he goes, "we're gonna have to do the same leg, the other leg will do the same thing, exact thing." And I was really like, wow, like this is terrible. So my eighth grade, 9th grade, and 9th grade, I had the other surgery done. Same problem, couldn't walk for a couple months. I was not cleared to run or jump or do any physical activity till I was in my junior year of high school. And I wanted to originally go out for the wrestling team. I wanted to play football. I wanted to do all that. And I just didn't get a chance to. Between all my issues, I couldn't play football. I couldn't do any of that because the doctor, was just worried because, if things aren't completely healed in the hip, a lot of things could happen. And, but I got cleared in my junior year, and I'm like, I can't even go out I'm not even going to try to go out for my senior year because I'd be in the JV if I'm lucky, if I even make it, because now, after all this surgery, I don't know how everything's going to go. And, but I did get cleared. And then lo and behold, in my senior year in the year 91, when I was going to graduate in June of 91, March of 91, wrestling came to a local fire company, and that's where I met Jimmy Dio. And I said, this is hit or miss now. This is something, if I don't try, I'm cleared now. The doctor says I can do physical sports, whatever. I'm cleared. So I went to the show. I enjoyed it. I asked about training. And April of 91, I actually started physically training at Jimmy's house because he had the ring in the garage at the time. And, lucky for me that it had worked out. But like I was telling you, fourth, sixth, eighth, and ninth grade, there were times where I was wondering if I was going to be able to walk right again or do anything physical just because of, my condition.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, like you're not even thinking about like sports or doing anything like over the top. Like you just are praying that I could just at least walk again.
Yeah. It was troubling, and it was just frustrating because, you think one thing and then it happened to the other, and you just, like doctor says, oh, we'll take them both out. You'll walk out of the hospital. You'll be good. And then, that kind of prolonging everything. And, like I said, I couldn't go out to play, football or go on the wrestling team or do any of that stuff because, I was physically unable to do that, and then once I finally got cleared, I'm like, what do I do by that time, football season was and the wrestling season was coming in I'm like, I can't play now. I'm like, I don't want to because like I'm going to start in my senior year. I'm like, I just thought it was a waste. And I just, and like I said, wrestling came into play. And, I always say, I believe everything happens for a reason. And, I'm thinking that, it came to the local fire company so I could talk to somebody. And, here I am 34 years later.
No, awesome. And I kind of actually want to discuss that with you, training wise. You already had overcome so much. So when you're going through your training, you kind of, I mean, this is just my best guess, but like mentally, it had to been like you had to be intimidated about the idea of training because you're like, okay, like I just went through all this. I don't want anything more to happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I was definitely like, even though the doctor said, hey, you're good to go, I was still like gun shy because, yes, I was on the farm and like like I said, running and jumping were out because that would put pressure on my hips. So that's why. So like even like I remember like even in elementary school when I could walk again before I had another surgery, we would play kickball out there, in the for recess. And one of my buddies would always be like, hey, I'll pinch run for you. I'm like, okay. So when I was up to kick the ball, they'd run for me, just because they knew I couldn't run. But yeah, it was definitely frustrating, and I was very cautious because, yeah, I didn't want something to happen and actually really put a damper or something happens where I couldn't walk anymore. But I took it slow, and I figured, I was always into like powerlifting and weight training. So I was trying to get stronger that way as well to hope that I could strengthen everything around me so nothing would happen.
And that's a very smart idea. So, and how long were you training before you got your first match?
3 months. I started training in April of 91, and I had my first match July 28th of 91 at the Scenic River Days in Reading, PA.
Oh man, and this is where I'm bringing out the handy dandy internet because according to this, you were. Let's see if I read this right. You debuted like in a tag team with your brother.
No. I actually did a singles that day. I wrestled a guy named of the Deadly Dutchman. And it was, like I said, it was Scenic River Days, and I bet you there was like 3 to 4,000 people there. It was packed. I mean, there were so many people there. It was unreal. Channel 69 News was there. And like I said, Scenic River Days was just a big like festival type of thing with so many different things there. But yeah, matter of fact, I can talk about it because wrestling's open so much, but Dutch and I, we worked over the match multiple times to get it down right, because people having their first match, nobody's expecting you to do well, and because you're new, you're still learning, learning the ins and outs of wrestling on what to do, what not to do, and we tried, especially we knew that there was going to be a TV crew there and everything was going on. We wanted to make it look as best as possible. And I thought we did really good. And, I put them over and everything. And, it was really cool. Like it was scary, but at the same time, it was so it was like justified. And, I had so much gratification that, I had a match, all the things that I had problems with when I was younger, it paid off. The match went well. Everything went good. People were happy. And, that was like, and that's where the taste really comes in, because you're training, but you never get out there in front of the crowd right away until you're ready. And I picked things up well. And that's what Jimmy said. That's the only reason really he gave me the match, was because I was picking things up so well that I could do a basic 5 to 6 minute match. And like I said, we went over it and we did really well. And, I was complimented and everything, but, I felt like it was a really relief that I got through it with all the training and that match, especially everything that I went through over the past how many years.
No, absolutely. And I'm glad to hear stories like that. And that's important for many people to hear, that, it may be tough, but, we just got to keep persevering and eventually it'll pay off.
Absolutely.
Now, what did you wrestle under in your first match?
I was just known as Big Mark Mest. That's it. I wore the overalls. I was the big farm boy because that's what I did. So I got a pair of bibs, and I was big. So at that time I was like 275, 280, and I was Big Mark Mest.
Was that just based on your farm life, or were you inspired?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, because I was they had me hailing from Ole Valley, Pennsylvania, which is kind of like a farming community, even though, people thought, I lived in Ole Valley, which I didn't, but, it was part of the gimmick, part of the farming thing. So we ran with it. But, yeah, I mean, it was easy because I was a farm boy. I grew up all my life. That's all I know how to do. I grew up on the farm, whether we were milking cows, feeding them, taking care of, chickens, the heifers, pigs, whatever, we were, we baled hay. We had to, put hay away, whatever we had to do. I was out in the field work, that was my life. So we just figured it would fit the gimmick because I know how to do it.
Yeah, make it believable, which in my humble opinion, definitely feels like it's lacking in a lot of ways that way.
Yeah, exactly. People will see right through you if you're fake. Especially when it comes to type of gimmicks and whatnot, all if they, if you don't feel comfortable in doing it, then they're going to see you're uncomfortable and they're going to see right through you. And that's why you got to find a gimmick that works for you, that you're confident about, because if not, you will be considered a fake and nobody will care about you or your character, because they see that you're just trying to play pretend, and, they want to believe. Wrestling fans want to believe. The old saying, suspend the disbelief. Is this really real? Isn't it real? I'm not really sure, but you know what? I'm going to watch because I just don't know the answer to that. And that as a character is what you need. Not just a character, but the stuff you do in the ring to be believable, to be able to, people go, wow, and like I said, everybody knows now, it's an open, wrestling was closed when I first started, it was a closed business. You couldn't, you didn't tell anybody anything. I didn't even tell my parents, because before my brother Troy started, I didn't even tell him, because it was kind of like one of those oaths that you took. Like, you're going to start training, you don't tell nobody. Like, this is our secret. This is our closed business, our business, not theirs, not anybody else's. Once Troy kind of got it, because Troy was asking me questions. Well, what about this? What about that? And I just, either vaguely told him, or I would say, no, man, this is real. This hurts. This happens. This, until he wanted to train and got in 6 months later. Then I opened the door and going, hey, look, I wasn't completely honest with you because this, and he understood it, but at the same time, back then, being closed, you never talked about it like you do today, because that's just the way it was.
Yeah, and to be fair though, and I'm a little bit more towards the old school style when I was training with you guys and other stuff. Like people don't realize, like, the whole point of, like, the suspending of disbelief, like, that's why we kept our mouths shut, because so they can do that. It's just trying to be courtesy, I guess, to the audience. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like anything, people buy tickets for what? Entertainment. They're buying they want to see entertainment. Wrestling is no different than if you have your favorite band or favorite singer coming into town and you want to see them. So you're going to spend the money on the ticket to go watch them because you want to be entertained. You're like, oh, this is, I heard them on the radio, but I never see them live. I want to go and I want to see what that's like. That's so it has a lot of common similarities, and it's entertainment to the point where, and you would go, and if you go to your band and say, and pick anybody, and there's no, you pick who your favorites are. Imagine showing up there and you just hated it. They didn't sing well, or just things they did you didn't like. You'd be disappointed. And, for whatever reason, whether the songs were kind of, they didn't try, or they were rushing through things because they just wanted to get done, where, wrestling's the same way. You're entertaining, it's an art. You're putting things together for people to be able to cheer and boo and whatnot all. When you're in a band, you're trying to sing these songs. You want them to be cheering with you and having a great time and enjoying things. And if they're not going to come back. And that's the same way with wrestling. They're not going to come back because anybody just wants to be entertained, and sometimes people don't care about the price of the ticket. They want to, whether it's a 3-hour show or 4-hour show, they just, for that time, they're going, look, life is really bad. I got all these problems, but I bought this ticket to go enjoy myself. That's what they want to do, and in the end, hopefully that the end result is whatever your hard work, people will be like, wow, you know what? This was a great show. Everything was great. I was so happy. If they come back again, I'm gonna come again. You want that, and you forgot about life. But today in this world, it's not the same anymore. And it's becoming, where everything with wrestling opened up, it's a whole different animal anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And plus, like, the biggest reason too, it's not that we didn't, like, respect the fans' opinion, or they're like, we weren't saying they were, like, dumb or anything, but it's the idea of, like, spoiling something. You don't want to risk spoiling something for somebody,
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, years ago, wrestling was considered that it was, it was a real fight. There was no predetermined, we went out there to beat the crap out of each other and trying to get a win. And honestly, if you did it right, you portrayed that every single time, and that's why the business was protected so much, because they didn't want that stuff leaking out, and nowadays it's all open. Everybody knows, oh, well, it's predetermined. We don't, somebody's going to win. We just don't know who, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, there's still an art to it. There's still a spot to entertain people. You watch any show, whether it's WWE or, AEW or, any of them, and you see crowd, they're enjoying, they're cheering, they're booing or whatever. because that's what our job is. Entertainers are supposed to do that. The question is, do you do it well or do you do it poorly? And if you do it poorly, you won't get an opportunity to do other shows because people will see that you're not trying, or you're not training enough, or you're not dedicating this, because it does take a lot of dedication to do this. So the fans know that, and we have to. The fans respect us. We respect the fans by busting our rear ends to train. So when we can put on a good match or a good show, that the people are satisfied, because in the end, they're the ones pay us. If nobody shows up, you might as well wrestle in your backyard then, because nobody's coming to watch you.
Yeah, but I think also too what's hurting as well, like I hate some of these like podcasts or like dirt sheets where they basically just give everything out, and I'm like, dude, how's anyone supposed to like entertain or tell a story anymore?
It's tough because there are a lot of them sheets out there about everything, and it just makes you wonder, But at the end of the day, at the end of the thing is, some bookings are predictable, so who's like, oh, this guy's got to win because he's got a match coming up at a big PLE or whatever it's going to be, or pay-per-view or whatever you want to, but there are swerves. But again, some people may not care if they're entertained. That's what it comes down to. You have to entertain them. Maybe people don't like the outcome of the match, or they don't agree with the booking, and that happens a lot. People are like, oh, I don't know why this guy's going to wrestle this guy. They happened 5 times already. I'm tired of watching that match. The armchair bookers of the internet. But the thing is, you still have a job to do. You still have to go out there and perform at 110%, because at the end of the day, especially if guys are on TV, that's their lifeline. That's their money. If they slack off on TV, they'll get pulled from TV and then released, and then they're out of a job. So they got to be at their best every single time, even if they get sick. I wrestled when I was sick. I'm sure a lot of them guys wrestle when they're not feeling good. They have a cold. They may have the flu. They may have some issues. They still wrestle because out of respect for the fans, they don't want to sit it out. They want to be like, oh, they're coming to see me, so I got to do this. And they do whatever it takes to perform. Yeah, after the end of the match, they're probably sicker than a dog, but you know what? That's the consequences for being a worker, for being a wrestler that's just trying to go out there to be the best you can be for the people, to give them their money's worth. So at the end of the day, going, hey, show was great. Whenever the next show is, I got to come back because, this was really, really cool.
Yeah, and to add on to your point too, Mark, that like they may be sick or they're hurt, but that's the beauty of working. Like you can come up to someone and be like, "Hey, man, my back's really killing me. Can we try to work around that in the match?" Like you don't want to like you said, you don't want to like half it. You want to go all out, but you also like try to avoid serious injury. So maybe you try to work the match around your limitations to make it look like, whoa, I didn't know that they were hurt.
Absolutely, yeah, because and stuff happens in a match too. Like, you can go in not feeling good, but then you could also get hurt in a match. And, I've been hurt in matches. Matter of fact, when I took the title from Pat Shamrock for Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Alliance, we were doing a 2 out of 3 falls. And the first fall, because he was champion, so I was taking the title, like literally like maybe 3 or 4 minutes in, I told him to give me a chop block, so to try to work to get me down, and he rolled my ankle. Oh, and I was like, oh my God, that really hurts. Like, holy hell, I couldn't hardly put any weight on it. I'm thinking like, I hope it wasn't broke, because I'm like, now I am hobbling. And I was, I'm telling the ref, like, dude, I'm hurt. Tell Pat I'm hurt. We're now. Like everything that we wanted to hit, we kind of did in the first fall. But after that, I'm like, I don't know how long I can do this. And we're going all 3 falls. and it was rough. I remember after that match, I had to go up some stairs, and like I had trouble getting up the stairs. And when I got home, like I couldn't walk. I really, thank God I had some old crutches that I actually had that I could get so I could get into the house and everything. And I'm thinking like, damn, like this is bad. Now, granted, it was just a bad sprain, nothing broke, thank God. But injuries happen all the time. And unless it's life threatening, we don't want to stop as wrestlers because we want to perform. Like, 3 minutes in, 4 minutes in, my ankle's hurt and I gotta go. I gotta perform, you know, and I'm just sucking through the pain. Like I gotta do this, and we got through it. I mean, I'm sure not everything looked great, but we got the point across. I got the title, and I mean, I paid for it for the next like 2 to 3 weeks until I could really get back to my normal self. But I know that going into it, I know that, hey, something happens to me, I get hurt here. I know that I'm accepting these consequences if there is any. Now that's why I train so there aren't any, or we try to bring the safety number down. So I look, you know what, the odds of getting hurt are instead of 40%, they're like 15. But there's always a chance when you're in the ring to get hurt. And, that's why we train to get better so that doesn't happen. But there's things that happen, freak things that happen that go wrong. And, whatever it is. And you just have to, work around it. And unless it's something serious, life threatening, we try to continue. And if you can't, like if it gets bearable, well, then, the match is over, because health is way more important than any match. There is no, well, he might pass out. He might have a concussion. He might, no, we're not. Match is over. We're done, because now the safety of the person is in jeopardy. Now we have to stop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've always, and we kind of talked about this behind the scenes a lot of times too, when we hung out originally, Mark, but with your size, was there ever a concern you're like, okay, I got to try to be careful or do my best to not hurt somebody?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and, being, well, at my heaviest, I was, a little over 450, give or take. But it was like one of them things where thankfully I learned, and this is what a lot of people don't do, is learn body control. Learn to be able to control your body. Even like if it's in midair, you can kind of twist and turn to get it to go a different way. Sounds weird, but physics, it allows it. You just have to figure that out, and well, yeah, it's one of them things where you never want to hurt anybody, and unfortunately I have in the ring. It's nothing that I wanted to do or it happened, but it was the inexperience of guys, and it sucks, because especially when you tell them like, look, and you talk to them and say, do this, this, and this. Like, I mean, I separated a guy's shoulder, literally like 2 minutes into a match in a tag with my brother and I. My brother and I were tagging, and it was against two other guys that were from the school, and we were all, 3 years in, maybe, give or take, at best. And a simple spot that I did, the guy, when I clotheslined him, tried to do a 360, which he had no means of doing. Should have never tried it. I don't know why he would try it, because he wasn't a big guy. So I guess he wanted to make me look strong, which I appreciate. But at the end of the day, when he hit, he separated his shoulder immediately. Ouch. Yeah. And I knew it, because it was like, I mean, the pain that he was in, whatnot, all. I let him tag out, and I talked in Troy. I said, look, he's hurt. We can't be here much longer. And we finished the match and everything. And it separated his shoulder because he tried to do a 360. And we even said, why would you try and do that? That's the old other saying. If you don't know how to do something, you don't do it. And, he tried to do it. And I mean, it was a simple clothesline, simple spot, atomic drop, inverted atomic drop. I hit the ropes, clothesline him. As I clothesline him, he tried to do a 360. landed on his shoulder and separated it. I mean, the scream that came from him and the pain, I could just see like, oh man. Matter of fact, it was so bad that he was actually under the ring puking because of it.
Yikes! I mean,
Yeah, it was bad. So our 10-minute match went about 4 or 5 because we were down to one guy, and there's nothing we could do. But it was his fault. I felt bad, even though it wasn't my fault. No intentions on it. Same way, I separated one of my other student, or at that time a student's shoulder. We were out in the Reading Stadium, Labor Day. It was my brother and I versus the two brothers that were training, and they were training for a couple months. And like, hey, it's a big show. A lot of people at the Reading Phillies, whatnot. It was for Labor Day, and the finish was Troy Cal tips him. I splashed him, and I told him, I'm like, look, I told him how to brace, how to this. Well, I guess he freaked out and he put his hands up the wrong way, separated a shoulder immediately. And as I jumped, and it's like anything. You can only put, my hands only extend so far, I mean, and I tried to brace it. So, because I saw where his hands were, I'm going, oh, God damn, this is bad. This is going to be terrible. And when I splashed him, I heard the pop, and he was like, 1, 2, 3, and he just rolled over, and I knew it was bad, and I felt so bad. But again, he didn't listen, and I don't blame him. It's just that he was new, and injuries happen, because we're learning, and we're learning all the time. Hell, when I wrestled Pat and he hurt me, I'm 20 plus years in already, so the old cliche, shit happens, and it does. Unfortunately, that's part of the game. Doesn't matter if it's wrestling, it's football, hockey. You're playing a contact sport. The odds of getting hurt are always there for it.
Yeah, and I'll try to be on a more positive note for you, Mark. Do you remember the fair when you and I had a singles match?
I think so. I vaguely think I remember that. I believe.
Well, you know me, Mr. Anxiety right here. When I was told that I was going to wrestle you, for starters, I was honored because this was our only match ultimately. But like, I wanted to do you proud, because you are a veteran, and I just wanted to listen. I just wanted to have a good match with you. I didn't want to let you down, right?
Right.
And I was like nervous the whole way, and you're like, trust me, Josh, it's okay. We got this. He goes, the finish is going to be me splashing you. The same scenario that you just talked about.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, whatever you do, don't do this or do that. Yeah. And honestly, and people will probably be like wondering, I didn't feel that thing.
If it's done right, yes. I mean, like I said, this is contact. We make contact. It's going to look like I murder you, but at the same time, it's one of them deals where, the better it looks, and as long as you're safe, that's what matters, because safety does matter in wrestling, even though it may not look like it at times. Some people can get a little reckless, but yeah, I am worried more about hurting somebody than anything. I'd rather hurt myself than somebody, because then I just feel bad.
No, I'm the exact same way. If something bad happens to me, I'm like, I probably deserve it. But if someone else gets hurt, I'll be like, oh man, I would feel horrible. But yeah, no, and I just remember, I'm like, afterwards, I'm like I knew you were on top of me, but I was like, oh, nothing. This is great.
Right.
So I was like, but then I just remember like being all nervous. I'm like, hey, Mark, did everything work out good for you? Like, I just didn't want to disappoint you.
Right. Yeah, no. And that's the thing is, it's like, training guys and stuff, I only try to go to your strong points, and that's what we used, and it's us working together to make it, again, it's entertainment, to make the people the like yay or nay or, whatever, so they have a good time. And at the same time, we are safe, at what we do. So, because, hey, at the end of the day, majority of the people that wrestle in the independents, come Monday morning, they have a job to go to, you know, and a job that pays the bills. You know, they're the ones that, you know, those are the, you know, whether it's first shift, second shift, third shift, you know, the jobs that say, hey, you know, if I don't pay this, I can't pay rent, or I can't pay this, or I can't pay that. You don't want to get hurt in wrestling. And then, like, well, I can't go to work. Well, that means I'm going to lose my house or my apartment because I can't pay my bills.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And speaking of paying the bills, did you ever get like a look from like big companies?
We did I was backstage for WWE back in late 95, I think it was.
Oh,
Uh
really?
yeah, I was an extra for Raw, and they were doing Superstars tapings at the time, you know. But see, the thing is, it was, you know, my size, like, I mean, and part of that's probably, and I put a lot of that on me because, like, I could have been better if I would have kept in more, a little bit more better shape. You know, I would have lost a little weight, could move around. But I mean, I don't. Thing is, I have no regrets on everything I did. But I mean, I went there. You know, it was cool to see the machine and how things were run. You know, you have to get there early and you stay there all day until Raw's over, and then you can finally leave. And we went to the next one. Of course, we were in a snowstorm for the Superstars tapings up in Allentown. You know, but I mean, so I mean, I wouldn't say I was on their radar, but I mean, it was cool to be part of it. You know, so uh, but other than that, no, I don't think I was ever really like, hey, we could sign this guy. No, I don't think I was ever there, which I'm okay with because I had the school at the time, and I was more my focus really than anything.
What what episode could people find that on Peacock or like the network?
Oh, well, see, I never did anything on TV. See,
Oh,
that I was the extra, but I didn't. I was kind of one of the extras that did nothing, you know. So, which happens a lot of extras. If they don't need you for anything, you just kind of sit back there and you just kind of watch the show. When it's over, you know, you get your money and you go home. You know, but yeah, we never. I mean, the first night we got in there, we got in the ring, and you know, Killer Kowalski went over a couple of things to do in the ring and this and that. But you know, other than that, uh, you know, we were just there as the extras just in case they needed something. They didn't need anything, so we, you know, that's all it really was.
you
But
got to meet Killer Kowalski?
yeah,
Oh man, what was he like?
he was nice. You know, he was, you know, he was in the ring talking to us and everything about, make sure we knew what we were doing, this and that, and the whole 9 yards and whatnot, all. You know, but I mean, scary dude at first, but you know, when you talked to him, you had a little conversation. It was, it was okay.
Was there any legends that you were like nervous to wrestle, but like really cool to work with?
You mean the ones that I did wrestle?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, whenever you're gonna wrestle a name, you know, it's always because you're always worried, you know, because this is like a test, you know. Like you can wrestle a bunch of indie guys all the time, but when you wrestle a name, you know, when I got the first wrestle Bam Bam Bigelow, I was ecstatic. You know, I'm thinking like, man, I got in the ring with Bam Bam, like, you know, and I always loved Bam Bam. You know, I was, you know, stuff I watched him on TV, and I'm thinking like, man, share the ring with him and everything. And yeah, because that's a test, because you don't want to flop, you don't want to be terrible, you don't want to, you don't want to look sloppy because somebody that it's been there, done that. You want their feedback and say, hey, what do I need to get better? You know, don't sugarcoat anything. You know, but yeah, I mean, all of them, every single one that I wrestled. I wrestled Bam Bam twice, Bundy, um, the Road Warriors.
Wait, you wrestled the Road Warriors?
Yeah.
Oh boy, I bet that was intense.
Well, it was during their time that they were fighting, and Hulk was always kind of drunk.
Ooh.
So yeah, it was, there is an old saying, and my tag partner at the time, Outlaw Max Crimson, huge fan of the Warriors. I mean, I was too. I was more of a demolition guy, but I still love the Warriors. You know, the old saying is, "Don't ever meet your heroes," kind of deal. and that's kind of like, got to wrestle him, but at the same time, it was kind of like mixed signals because like Hulk was really nice, but Animal was at the time was just angry all the time, because I guess he had a team with him, but yeah, it was definitely different, and eventually got to work with Demolition a little bit, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, did a stint with The Godfather, got to work with Ricky Morton at one point in a 6-man tag for Tate. Got to wrestle the New Age Outlaws out in Wisconsin one time, so like when you wrestle somebody that's been there and done that, that's one of them deals where, you want to be on your A game because not only do you want to, you're not saying you have to impress them, but they've been there, done that. So they're going to know, they get you in the ring. They're going to know if you're playing wrestler or you actually are a wrestler, and I think that's the measuring stick, and yeah, I was every single one that I ever got in the ring with, even guys like Tom Brandy, who I still say to this day can't have a bad match with Tom Brandy, whether it was, Sal Sincere, the Patriot, or whoever, it didn't matter. If Tom was such a great worker, the psychology that if you had a bad match with him, you shouldn't even be in the business.
Oh, hey, absolutely. I had nothing wrong with that. And you kind of mentioned earlier about your school. Was teaching something that you always considered doing when you were wrestling?
No, actually not. See, 2 years in, Jimmy says, hey, I'm getting out of the business. Like he's going to close down the school. And my brother and I were like, oh, like, well, where's everybody going to train? And Jimmy found the place where we're at today yet. And at that time, it was John from Blandon. Well, Blandon, it wasn't a self-storage yet. It was just an excavating place. And he found a spot. He goes, do you want to, he asked if we wanted to buy like the business, the ring and everything, the name, everything that would have went with it. And, my brother's like, I think we should. I got to realize here, I'm not even 20 years old yet. My brother's gone to college. He's been in a little bit of business through college and stuff. I'm not, and he goes, why we should do this? Because Jimmy had some rentals, that we could do, and I'm like, training guys. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, we're in 2 years. Like, I'm really like, I don't know. Like, I just, I'm really, and, honestly, I feel, I'm kind of glad I listened, my brother Troy, and he goes, I think we should do it, and we went out and got a loan from the bank to pay, to pay Jimmy, to pay everything off. We got the ring and stuff. And, it was one of them things that it just kind of grew onto us, at least to me. I don't know about Troy, but it just grew where, okay, we're in 2 years. What do we know? We don't know anything. We're still wet behind the ears. But, as we started to get, we had some rentals to help, pay the bills, and we get a couple students here and there. And, it was slow to start, but like, it was definitely something not on my bucket list to do, but, I'm kind of glad we did in the end here because, we trained so many people. I can't even count the number of we trained, or if not trained, help with training. So there's some that came, after they were partially trained, and then we'd help them get better, so, so, I mean, I'm really thankful because like I said, I don't regret anything I ever done in my life. And, whether, could I went maybe mainstream somewhere? Maybe, I almost went to Puerto Rico one time, but that fell through due to a booking issue, but like, I got to travel. I got to meet a lot of guys, got to wrestle some guys, and, the biggest thing is training them, especially now, seeing them guys going out there and having their first match and then matches down the road to see like, man, I helped mold that guy, it's a great feeling now, And like I said, I don't regret any of it at all.
Well, that's awesome though. But so I'm actually very surprised at how quickly you guys became trainers because honestly, I really enjoyed your teaching and listening to you and how you do things. So give yourself a lot of credit there, Mark. I think you've done an amazing job as a teacher.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But see, that's the thing. That's the difference between me, my brother and I, and a lot of other ones. Like, I'm very humble about it because, to me, yeah, I'm in 34 years, but I'm a nobody. I never made it mainstream. I never had a name for myself. And it's not that I'm angry about that or bitter about it. That's just the facts. So, the thing is, like, you're right. I helped a lot of people. Like I said, I mean, there's so many that like I said, I can't, I don't recall everything. I really don't. Like, there'll be like, and I see some people today, like at shows, like, hey, how it's been? And I don't remember them. Or their face looks familiar, but I don't remember their name, and, that's just because of so many people that I have endured over the years. And, I always looked at this. If I can help somebody get better, then I've done my job, and I appreciate everything about the prop. I'm very humble because there's too many egos in this business that are going, hey, I'm really good. You should see me. Look at me. Look what I've done. Hey, look, I'm a champion here, or I'm this, or I'm that. I don't really care. What have you done in the business to help people? What have you done to make this business better? Like anything. I was a Boy Scout. Whenever we went camping somewhere, what did you do? At the end of it, when you're ready to leave, you make the place, hopefully better than you left it. That's what I want to do with wrestling. I want to make it better when I finally say, look, I can't do any of this anymore, and I'm not going to shows, or I'm not doing any rentals, or I'm not to say, look, you know what? The rings are gone, and I'm just at home enjoying, the rest of my life. I want to be able to say, hey, I'm happy with everything I did. And like, I just want people to understand, to know that I gave it 100% with everything I ever did, and I'm real. I don't blow smoke up your rear ends. I'm not, that's not who I am. If something was bad, I tell you. If how many times I've heard in the business, hey, we're going to start TV, man. I want to push you. I want to do this. If I had a dime for everybody said that what we're going to do, I'm going to run TV, I'm going to do this, I'd probably be a millionaire because so many people say it. And then when it falls through, there's 20,000 excuses, So you're just blowing smoke just to make you sound really good. And then reality, it was all just a smoke screen.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, I could definitely attest to that because and it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that do that. And it's like you said, in the indies, we don't really, guys in the indies don't make a whole lot of money. So for people to do that and kind of like rip people off, it's kind of unfortunate.
Well, unfortunately, that's part of the business that's the not so glamorous side of professional wrestling. Everybody sees everything on TV going, oh, man, that's what I want to do. But, to some people don't understand the travel, the training, the 3 a.m. drives to find a hotel, or you're driving to the next town, and then you get there first thing in the morning, and maybe you look for a hotel to be able to sleep for a couple hours before the next show. And then, afterwards, do you have money for another hotel room, or can you get the promoter to pay for another hotel? Or, hey, I've got a 6 or 7 hour drive home and I'm driving home by myself, so I got to, if I leave now, I'll get home. Hopefully I'll be home in time so I can go to work the next day. There's a lot of that, a lot of behind the scenes, like the travel. It's not like, oh, I'm driving 6 hours away. Well, fly me out there. No, that costs too much. Oh, I got to drive my own vehicle. Oh, I hope I make it. Hope my vehicle makes it. What are you going to pay me? Oh, well, I need a little more than that. Okay. Well, how about a hotel? Nope. Oh, so I got to drive 6 hours, wrestle. I get paid and I have to come back home. Or you sleep in your car. That's your choice. You
Yeah,
know?
no, absolutely. And the sad part is some people may not even commit to what they promised to you as well.
Well, that's also a big policy, problem. And that's the thing. It's like it's one of them things where wrestling, and don't get me wrong, I'm not like, downing wrestling because I love it so much. Again, I'm being real. It's not all glamorous. You know,
Absolutely.
there's guys that will try and like, oh, I pay X amount of dollars. Well, I don't have that. Though the crowd wasn't so good, so I can only give you this much. And it sucks because if you say screw you, well, guess what? If you were booked there for other shows, you're not booked there no more. You know, and honestly, like when you're young, you just want to wrestle and you don't care about if you make money or not. Trouble is, as you get older, and you're working your regular job, and all of a sudden money becomes a little tight, a little short. Then you start realizing, going, wow, I got a show 4 hours away, but man, I only got $60 worth for gas. I hope he's going. What is he going to pay me? Because now, $60 may get me out there, but I might need 30 or 20 or 30 to get home. And then if I want to get something to eat on top of that, I don't have any money. Do I get paid the following week? And then I need gas in the car for all week. So now it makes me wonder, like, do I have enough to do this? Or maybe I'm going to have to cancel. And because I don't have the funding to go do it. And that's happened a lot, so it's, there's a side that's not glamorous, which a lot of us struggle with because you want to wrestle, but at the same time, at what cost, at what price? Yes, we're going to lose money in wrestling. That happens all the time. You're just hoping that one day it'll pay off by a contract or somewhere where you get lucky, where you get seen, and you can get a name for yourself to make a little bit of money. But it's definitely, it's not always glamorous.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but also too, I want to get back to some of your teaching styles. You definitely you were honest, but one of the things that I liked, like listening to you, you would always ask people, "What did you like?" Like you made people think. Like you would always ask, "What did you like? What didn't you like?"
Exactly. Yeah, because in the end, you're the one that's doing the moves. If there's a move you don't like to do, why did you do it? Or if you didn't do, or you can't do it well, why are you doing it? And the only way you're going to learn to get better is you experiencing what happened and be able to tell me, oh yeah, in there I hit this and that wasn't very good, because then you're learning from your mistakes. Remember, we have to fail to learn. So you go through the match. I'm not always going to say, oh, I like this, and this, and I didn't like this. That's why I ask you, what did you like? What didn't you like? Because in the end, if you can tell me, oh, my punches were terrible. So guess what? Now you need to know you need to work on punches. Oh, but I hit the clothesline really good. Okay. I hit a good suplex. Oh, okay. My
Well,
kicks weren't so good. So, okay. Now, so yeah, you're right. And guess what? That's now for something for you to work on as well.
and also, and to add to your point, and this is just my humble opinion, it feels like you're also like showing people like, hey, like it gives them motivation. Be like, okay, I did this good. Like, I mean, yeah, man, that did look bad. I got to work on that. But I said, well, at least that turned out to be good. So at least it gives people like, okay, like keeps them motivated, like keep going. Be like, okay, like something good came out of this. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. That's why that's why we train, because not everything's always going to be great. There's always going to be error for, a slip up, and we have to understand that we have to come to terms to that. You're not going to hit a perfect move every single time. It just doesn't happen, but can you do it where you're good at 75 to 85%? Yeah. If you practice, you practice and you practice, and that's what it comes down to. The dedication of training, the dedication of listening, trying to get better, trying to figure it out on your own. Because if I tell you, it's like going to school and teacher gives you the test, and then the teacher goes, hold on, here's another sheet, and it's the answers. What did you learn? Nothing.
Nothing.
But if I say, hey, here's the test. I I need you to answer these for me. And that's why the whole thing is, what did you do? What did you like? What didn't you like? Because now if you're answering the questions that you developed while in there, you'll see like, oh wow, you know what? Now it's making you see the stuff you're doing in the ring going, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to work on that. Or I did do that pretty good, but I could work on that. I still could do this. I still could do that. So you're learning from your mistakes to learn to go, okay, I need to do this better. I need to do that better. This is pretty cool. So you see it. I can tell you till you're blue in the face, but if you don't see that, it's worthless. It's hopeless, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I can't make you throw a great punch. I can tell you how to kind of show you, teach you, but in the end, you're the one that's moving your arm and throwing a punch. Same with a clothesline or an elbow or a kick. I physically can't do that for you. You have to. So I can guide you and tell you that looked good, it didn't look good. Hey, try this, try that. Try different scenarios on how to throw a strike. But, in the end, you have to do it. And until you do it, until you realize going, oh, all right, now my punches are they're a lot better. You will see that. I won't have to tell you, like, how do these look? Oh, they're looking good. I thought they looked better, because now you see what you're doing. You're opening your eyes to what you're training. And and then when you learn that goes along so much further than just somebody be going, do it again, do it again, do it again. And you keep going, how'd it look? How'd it look? You need to know how it looks. If you throw a punch or you throw a kick or you throw a clothesline, you need to know that was nice and that was solid, or yeah, that was terrible. Because then you have to try and fix it.
Yeah, and also too, like the idea of adjusting. You talk about throwing punches. Like, you could throw a punch on somebody, like, wow, that looks good with this person. But then when, say, so and so wrestles with you, and then you try to throw a punch, like, why does that look bad? Well, maybe it's because everyone's different, so you might have to switch how you do it depending on the person you're working with.
Well, that's also a possibility as too. And then, because here's the thing is, you're going to have different heights, different body sizes, so you might punch somebody that's, like 5'5", and it's okay. But now you're going to punch somebody who's 6'3". Like, now you're reaching up higher depending on your height. So, so now, like, the angle's different. Everything's going to be different, so that's how, and that's learning to adjust, once you learn how to throw a punch, then you have to learn to adjust it. Whether a guy's 5 foot or 6'9", you got to figure out how to throw that punch to make it look good.
Yeah, and my next question for you, Mark, is I kind of, my personal pro wrestling that I enjoy watching is the technical stuff, like a Bret Hart or Kurt Angle, or like some of the Japanese guys. What would you say be the kind of wrestling that you like gets you jumping up and like, yeah, this is awesome?
I mean, I like all sorts, but like some of the best is like, I always like big man, and I like big man, little man if it's done right. But I like uh, Japanese style is good. Don't get me wrong. I like to watch, but I really like the more like the stronger style, like when two guys. I like technical. I like the technical stuff, but I like a good brawl too. So I like a variety of things. I just don't like one thing, because wrestling is not just one thing, Now, granted, there are some guys that are just one thing, but you don't have to be just one thing.
Yeah, I should have. My apologies. I probably should have rephrased that. I like tactical wrestling and like the Japanese style the most, but I guess I should have asked, what would be your favorite out of all of them? I mean, you can enjoy all of them, but I mean, like, I guess my question should have been, which one do you like probably the most?
Probably the most. I just like big on big. I like the two big guys going at it, kind of like a strong style type of thing, That's probably my favorite because when you have two big guys in the ring and they can just go at it and just and they don't have to be technical, but it's like slab of meat hitting slab of meat. That's like Vader and Bigelow. Them guys
Ooh.
if they would face each other, like stuff like that, or you get like a Hanson and somebody, you get a Terry Gordy and Dr. Death Steve Williams.
Oh, those are good ones.
Guys like that where they're just strong and just powerful. They're just beating the hell out of you. That's the stuff that I like.
But it's funny you mentioned Hanson. I just watched a Hanson and Kobashi All Japan match on YouTube the other day.
Oh wow, I bet you that was good.
Oh yes, it was. And needless to say, many of them had black eyes.
I bet.
and actually, you mentioned them too. Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Terry Gordy. Holy moly, were those guys underrated?
I know, right? They were a powerhouse, and they could beat you up and throw you from pillar to post whenever they felt like. It didn't matter who it was.
Yeah, no, they were. Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I was watching this. I forget his name, but they were talking about Dr. Death Steve Williams, and he said he liked Steve, but man, he was so scared to work with him because he was so strong. He didn't realize how strong he was.
Yeah,
it's almost like a fight for your life kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't realize these guys are strong. I'll never forget. This happened on more than one occasion. We used to do shows for Tommy Jeanette up in the New England area, New England states, and we would do fairs. And we were on a tour one time. It was like a 10-day tour. And I'll never forget, Demolition Axe would wrestle the real big guy from WCW back then, Roadblock.
Oh, yeah, I've heard Roadblock.
Yeah, well, I remember watching. Now we're on because a lot of the places it's right by the stage, so we'd be on the stage, just watching and everything. And more than on one occasion, I've seen Demolition Axe beat the snot out of people because whether they messed up or whatever. He was taking Roadblock, and Roadblock was 400 pounds. He was beating him up. He was tossing him like a rag doll. And I mean, he literally was picking him up. He slammed him down, tossed him out of a corner one time. And I'm just thinking, like, man, like to pick him up. And he picked him up with ease. This wasn't just like, oh, you struggled. No, it was like up and down. I was like, man, and he was literally beating the hell out of him. And my brother and I were looking, going, man, don't ever let us piss off Demolition Axe because my God, he's a strong SOB, And then we got to know Bill for, on a lot of them trips, and he told us that he was a like a teacher for like the for the kids that got in trouble. So in these schools, and he said he actually every door that he went in, they would lock behind him. He told us a story one time where a kid was like, come in. He told everybody to sit down, and he started mocking. He's like, my name's Mr. Edie, and the guy was like, wouldn't be quiet. He goes, will you please be quiet? And then please sit down. He goes, no, Mr. Edie, I'm not going to do, and he kept mocking him. And he's like, kids, like, come up here. And like, listen, he goes, you need to understand, have respect. And he just started mocking him. He said he grabbed him by the throat, picked him up, and held him against the wall, one arm. And the kid was like almost 200 pounds. One arm, picked him up by the throat, stood there and go, you're going to respect me or else. And he was like, oh my God, yeah. He couldn't really talk, and he let him down. He said he didn't have a problem with that student ever again. But Bill's a big dude, and he's a strong dude. I would not want to mess with him. And if I saw him in Dark Alley, I'd run the other way.
No, man, there's some legit guys like, I mean, me, I try to be nice to everybody because I don't want to hate nobody.
Right.
But there's just some people though, like, man, you see them get mad, you're like, holy moly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. They turn into the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, right. But speaking of which, has there obviously you've been around the blog wrestling and all that stuff. When you still help teach and help with shows and all that. When was that moment where you were kind of like, maybe I should stop in ring performing?
Well, that kind of was that wasn't something that I let's just say that was how can I say it was given to me by, I guess, the grace of God, I'll say. I got sick. Um, I wrestled. My last match was November, I think, of 2017, and I was going to wrestle in 2018, of course. But that winter, I got sick. I didn't feel good, and because of getting sick, it's one of them deals where it's like I'm thinking it was a blessing. It was the if I because like none of us want to stop wrestling, because we love it so much. But we get to the point where we get so old. We're not just old, but like our bodies beat down where you just can't perform like you should, and you should just give it up. My knees weren't great back then. They're still not great now. But what I mean is, you know, and I think it was, like I said, I always believe everything happens for a reason. The only way for me to stop is that I have to be forced to stop. And me getting sick and having to get surgery, was that reason. And in the end, was it a hard pill to swallow? Yes, but it was the right pill to swallow. I think it was just best just because at the end of the day, one, you don't want to go out there and make fun of yourself. And, you don't want people feeling sorry for you going, man, he should have gave it up years ago. So, I mean, I believe God did that for me, which I'm okay with, because here I'm still involved with wrestling. I still help training. I still, do rentals to go to shows. I believe that you don't have to be just an in-ring performer to be wrestling. There's so many other things that you can do, and there is a lot of things to do besides wrestling, and I be part of wrestling in a different manner. And, I'm blessed, I'm blessed to be able to do this yet, and how long it's going to happen, I don't know. I just hope and pray every day that, I can wake up and do what I can do, spend time with my nephews. And when it's time for shows or it's time for training or whatever else, that I can do it until, something happens where I finally say, you know what, I have to stop because of health or whatever the reason is. And just, I put everything in God's hands.
No, amen to that, Mark. I mean, there was a number of reasons why I had to stop like training and with when I was helping referee and all that stuff with you guys. I mean, it was a hard pill to swallow, having to sit down in front of a lot of you guys and tell you that I couldn't do it no more. And I admit that it sucked. I mean, I remember my last show and I just remember crying a lot because I felt so bad that I had to leave you guys. But then, like you said earlier about how, like, well, I could still coach, I could still, help out shows if need be.
Right.
I'm a writer for Hometown Sports as well as my blog and doing this talk show.
Right.
And my friend Kenny Varner likes pro wrestling, and he had said about, man, I can never make enough time to do these pro wrestling shows. I don't know the guys, well enough to do this. So I don't know how to approach this. And as soon as he said that, I was like, well, I know all those guys.
Right.
And he's like, do you want me to cover them for Hometown? And he's like, would you please? And I said, absolutely. So
Right.
I've been doing that ever since, whether it be, seeing Rob and them, or hanging out with Matt,
Right. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer of helping build communities. And that's kind of what my goal is with my writing and among other things. So I totally believe, like you said, part of God's plan, there's something there that can maybe help build something up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I agree 100% because, and when it's time to hang, when it's time to hang things up, it's always, it's always emotional. But here's the thing. Just like, like take Ox, for example, he's retiring from, what he did, and now he's going to own his own business. He's closing one chapter of his life and he's opening up another one, something that he always wanted to do, and I believe that we all go through that somehow, some way, whether we change a job or we move to a different location or we meet other friends or meet other people and other people come into our lives. I believe everything happens for a reason. And, I look at it as, whatever it is, you just make the best of it. You got to make the best of it because, I'm 52 years old, and I've learned a while ago that if you're always miserable and you're not happy and you don't change it, one day you're going to wake up when you're 60, 65, if you're lucky to get to be that old, or you into your 50s, and you're going to look back in your life and going, man, I was miserable. Why was I miserable? Why was I so mad at the world? Why did I hate so many things? Or why did I hate doing this? Or why now life has kind of passed you by, and you're sitting there going, man, I could have done so much more if I would have opened my eyes, and I didn't. So, and I believe that, like, you can't hate life. You can't, life's too short. You can't be mad at people all the time. There is forgiveness, but at the same time, it's one thing if it's something really, really bad, like somebody murdering somebody or something like that's different. But I mean, it's like if you were wronged by somebody some way and it didn't harm you physically, and maybe it harmed you, emotionally, or financially. Yes, you can have, you say I'll never forgive, but you'll never forget. So it's one of them life teachings that will stick with you, and I believe knowledge is power. So the more life that you do, the more whatever comes by, it's teaching you how to live it better. And you just have to follow the signs sometimes, and I believe that, you have a path that's chosen to an extent. However you want to go off that path is going to be up to you and how you handle things.
No, absolutely. And I 1000% agree with that. And especially with, a lot of things that, you and I had to overcome. And there's plenty of other people out there. Just, if you're listening to this, there's always hope.
Right. Yeah, there's always hope from somewhere, from somebody. You just have to look for it. Even on your darkest day, there is somebody there to say, hey, I'm reaching out. Grab my hand. I will do what I can to help you. There's always somebody there. You just have to look. Sometimes it's rough. Sometimes you're down in that gutter and you think that it's hopeless, but eventually, you'll start to look, you'll see a light, you'll see something and be like, okay, somebody comes along. So you're talking to somebody or this or that. And all of a sudden you realize, like, man, I have it bad, but that person has it worse. Now I don't feel so bad, but I feel bad for the person. But I'm thinking, like, you know what? And that gives you the confidence going, you know what? I can turn this around. I know I can, and you know what? If I do turn it around, I'm going to help that person out because they have it worse off than me. And I know they're going to need help, and it's just, if I think we all helped each other more, I think this world would be a better place.
No, amen to that. Like it's no, I could not agree with anything more with that. It just feels like everyone's out. And if, I mean, I'm all for people wanting to be themselves. That's fine. But what does that have to do with trying to build everyone else together? You know what I mean?
Right. No, I totally agree.
And with that being said, Mark, any future plans you would like to announce with your wrestling camp and all that?
No, I mean, we're still, Jason Havoc has taken over. Well, he started his workers university kind of thing at the school. So he's trying to make a mark up for himself as too. So the dungeon's working with workers university. trying to bring guys in, try to train, try to just trying to help guys that want to get into business. I'm still doing some rentals here and there. I do a couple, do like maybe one or two a month here and there. So I'm always looking to help anybody out. If somebody wants me to watch a match or a promo or whatever, they send it to me. I'd gladly, break things down. That's just me. I just want to help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And would you like to plug in any of your stuff for people to reach out to you?
Well, you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, X. They're all triple M007. The dungeon Facebook page is Dungeon Strong, so you can look me up there. I'm also on TikTok, Snapchat. TikTok. I think I'm not sure exactly what I am on there anymore, but I use it, but I don't remember my handle so much. But and then of course there's also Dungeon Strong at gmail.com. That's an email if anybody wants to email me at all for anything. And like I said, anybody wants to get a hold of me here on whether it's Facebook, Instagram, X, my messages are open, my door is open, anybody that needs help with anything, and not just wrestling. I've talked to people about life and having issues, and they're at a crossroads and they're not sure what to do. They need some advice, I've done that. I'm here to help. The door's open, come through the door, and I will do my best to help whoever I can as much as I can.
No, amen to that. And thank you so much, Mark, for coming on the show today.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. This was a really good thing.
No, I appreciate that. It's just, I've known you for a long time, and I have nothing but love and respect for you as a wrestler and as a human being. So again, I appreciate you being on here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And for all of you that are watching, I appreciate you as well for watching, and love you all. God bless. Be safe, everybody.